You ever look back and realize there was a moment where everything started to go wrong, but you didn't know it yet? For me, it was the day my wife kissed me goodbye in the driveway and told me to stay safe. The morning sun cast long shadows on our quiet suburban street as I loaded the last bag into my truck. It was another 3-month trip to the oil rigs in Texas, a routine I'd gotten used to over the years. Grueling work, but it paid the bills and kept Emily and me comfortable. She stood on the porch with her coffee, wrapped in that oversized cardigan I got her for Christmas. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was something different about her that I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Don't work too hard out there," she said with a small smile, walking toward me. "You know me," I replied, smirking. "Always taking it easy." She laughed, but her voice sounded softer, almost distant. I brushed it off as early morning fatigue. She'd been juggling her new job at the bank and some fundraiser project for weeks now, and I knew she was running on fumes. As I hugged her goodbye, she held on longer than usual. "Stay safe, okay?" she whispered. "I always do," I said, kissing her forehead. I climbed into the truck and waved as I pulled away. In the rearview mirror, she stood there for a moment longer than usual, holding her coffee like she was lost in thought. The drive to the rig was uneventful, giving me too much time alone with my thoughts. Something about that goodbye stuck with me. Emily wasn't normally one for drawn-out farewells, and the look in her eyes, it felt like she was holding something back, but I chalked it up to stress. The first week on the rig passed as expected. Long hours, freezing showers, and bad coffee. Emily and I stuck to our usual routine, texts during breaks and quick evening calls before bed. But even those felt different. Her replies were shorter, more reserved. She used to send me long updates about her day, full of little anecdotes and jokes. Now it was just, "Work's busy. How's the rig?" One evening I pressed her about it. "Everything okay back home?" "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just a lot going on with the fundraiser and the new job. Sorry if I seemed distracted." I told her it was fine, but it didn't sit right with me. Emily wasn't one to hold back if something was wrong. She'd tell me. At least, that's what I thought. A few nights later, I found the note. It was tucked into the side pocket of my duffel bag, folded neatly in half. Her handwriting was unmistakable, rounded and careful. "I'll miss you every single day," I read. "I know you're doing this for us, and I love you for it. I'll keep busy, but don't think for a second that I'm not counting the days until you're home. I love you more than anything. Stay safe. Emily." For the first time in days, I felt like things were normal again. This was the Emily I knew, the thoughtful, loving woman who always found small ways to remind me how much I meant to her. I pinned the note to the small corkboard above my bed, next to a picture of us from last summer. It was from a trip to a cabin we'd rented, the two of us smiling by the lake. We looked happy, and for a moment I believed we still were. The work on the rig was the same as it always was, grueling shifts, deafening machinery, and stretches of quiet that gave me too much time to think. Emily and I kept up our usual routine of texts and nightly calls, but something about them was different. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. She'd always been talkative, eager to share every little detail of her day, from what she had for lunch to how the dog refused to go outside in the rain. But now her responses felt flat. "How was your day?" I asked during one of our calls. "Busy," she said after a pause. "Just the usual meetings and emails." There was no story, no follow-up, just a sigh and a quick, "What about you?" I tried to brush it off. She'd mentioned that the bank was understaffed, and the fundraiser she'd volunteered for was taking up more of her free time than expected. It made sense that she'd be stressed, but it didn't explain why our conversations felt so mechanical. One night, I brought it up. "You seem distant lately. Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm just tired," she said, almost too quickly. "I didn't mean to sound off. Sorry if I worried you." Her voice softened as she spoke, and for a moment it felt like things were back to normal. But after we hung up, the nagging feeling crept back in. A few days later, during a lunch break, I found myself talking to one of the guys on the rig, a welder named Tom. He was older, probably in his late 40s, and had been through 2 divorces. "How's the wife holding up?" he asked, nodding toward the photo of Emily I'd pinned to my locker. "She's good," I said automatically, but then added, "At least I think she is. She's been off lately." Tom smirked, but it wasn't a kind one. "Off how?" "Just quiet, distant. She says she's tired." Tom leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I've been there, man. My second wife pulled that on me before she started fooling around with some guy from work. Not saying that's what's happening, but you might want to keep your eyes open. I laughed it off, even though his words stuck with me. Emily wasn't like that. She wasn't the type to betray someone. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that grew with each passing day. Then came the night she didn't pick up. It was late, probably close to 10 p.m. her time, and I'd just finished a double shift. I dialed her number out of habit, but it went straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her. Even if she was busy, she usually sent a quick text to let me know she couldn't talk. I waited an hour, then tried again. Still no answer. By the next morning, my frustration had turned to worry. When she finally called, her explanation caught me off guard. "Sorry about last night," she said lightly. "I left my phone in the other room and didn't hear it." Her tone was casual, almost dismissive, but something about it felt rehearsed. "That's not like you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael, come on, you know how crazy things have been lately. I'm not trying to avoid you," she said with a small laugh. "You're overthinking it." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking it. But as I ended the call and stared out at the empty expanse of the ocean, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away, piece by piece. Work had a way of numbing your thoughts when you needed it most. The clamor of machinery, the smell of oil, and the endless routine were enough to keep my mind from spiraling. But in the quiet moments, the unease about Emily always crept back in. It was during one of those rare breaks when everything changed. I was sitting with a few guys in the break room, sipping bitter coffee and scrolling through my phone. Tom, the welder, sat across from me, laughing at something on his screen. "Check this out," he said, spinning his phone toward me. "My niece posted this from some charity event back home. These things always crack me up. Everyone acting like they care, but really just showing off their money." I glanced at the screen out of politeness, not expecting to recognize anyone. But then I froze. The photo was a group shot, probably taken at the end of the event. People in business casual attire stood around holding glasses of wine and laughing, and near the center was Emily. She looked stunning, dressed in a fitted black dress I hadn't seen before, her hair styled in loose waves. But it wasn't her outfit that caught my attention. It was the man standing next to her. He had his arm draped casually over her shoulders, a gesture that felt far too familiar for my liking. Emily was smiling, her head tilted slightly toward him, and I realized it was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. "Hey, you okay?" Tom asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I said quickly, handing his phone back. "Just tired." I didn't hear much of what he said after that. My mind was racing. Emily never mentioned going to a charity event. She certainly hadn't mentioned this guy. When I got back to my bunk, I pulled out my phone and texted Emily. "Hey, how's your day going? Doing anything fun this week?" I watched as the message marked read almost instantly, but the response didn't come until 20 minutes later. "Hey, same old, just working, meetings. You?" My chest tightened. She didn't even acknowledge the possibility that she'd done something outside the ordinary. Was she lying to me, or had she just forgotten to mention it? That night, I showed the photo to one of the younger guys on the rig, a guy named Chris. He was the tech-savvy type who could dig up almost anything online. "Think you can find out who this guy is?" I asked, trying to keep the tone casual. Chris raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Give me a few hours." By the time my next shift started, Chris had the information. "His name's Ryan Jacobs," he said, handing me a screenshot of his LinkedIn profile. "Looks like he's some big shot in finance, works at the same bank as your wife." That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just some random guy. It was someone she saw every day. I tried calling Emily that night, but she didn't pick up. The next morning, when she finally called, I couldn't hold it in. "Who's Ryan?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach drop. "He's just a coworker," she said, too quickly. "We were at the fundraiser for the bank. Why?" I didn't press further, not yet, but her tone didn't sit right with me, and I knew this wasn't over. For the first time, I felt like my world was starting to crack. I couldn't shake the image of that photo. Emily standing so close to Ryan, her smile bright in a way I hadn't seen in months. Every time I closed my eyes, it was there, taunting me. The explanation she'd given didn't add up, and I couldn't let it go. That's why 2 weeks into the trip, I made a decision. I told my foreman I needed to go home.
Supervisor. I needed a short break for personal reasons. A day later, I was on a flight back to Denver, my heart pounding the entire way. I didn't tell Emily I was coming. Part of me felt guilty for not giving her a heads up, but another part, the louder, angrier part, wanted to catch her off guard. If everything was fine, she'd be happy to see me. If it wasn't, well, I needed to know it. It was just past 8 p.m. when I pulled into our driveway. Emily's car was parked in the garage, but the house was dark. No lights, no TV noise, nothing. I sat in the truck for a moment, my pulse racing. As I walked up to the front door, I noticed something strange. Her shoes, the ones she always left by the door, weren't there. For some reason, that tiny detail sent a chill down my spine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled different, like a mix of candles and something else, a faint, unfamiliar cologne. "Emily?" I called out, my voice echoing in the quiet. No answer. I walked through the living room, my eyes scanning for anything out of place. The throw blanket was draped over the couch, and a half-empty wine glass sat on the coffee table. My stomach tightened. Heading down the hallway, I noticed the bedroom door was slightly ajar. That's when I heard it. A muffled voice, low and almost inaudible. I froze, my hand gripping the doorknob. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Slowly, I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dimly lit by the bedside lamp. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing a silk robe I hadn't seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her back was to me, but her voice was clear now. "I miss you too," she said softly. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." My mind went blank. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She turned slightly, catching me in the reflection of the mirror on the wall. Her eyes widened in shock, and she dropped the phone onto the bed. "Michael," she gasped, scrambling to stand up. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. All I could do was stare at her, at the robe, at the phone still lit up with an active call. A name was on the screen. Ryan. "What the hell is going on?" I finally managed to say, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw panic in her eyes, and it hit me like a freight train. Whatever this was, it wasn't innocent. The room was heavy with silence. Emily frozen in place, her phone still glowing on the bed. The name Ryan stared back at me like a slap in the face. "Michael, it's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "Then explain it," I said sharply. "Make me understand why my wife is sitting in our bedroom whispering to another man while I'm hundreds of miles away." Emily looked down, avoiding my eyes. "He's just someone I talk to, a friend," she said weakly. "A friend?" I snapped, my anger rising. "Friends don't talk about missing each other like that, and they sure don't do it while you're dressed like that." Her face flushed, but she stayed quiet. "Give me your phone," I demanded, holding out my hand. She clutched it tighter, her reaction telling me more than words ever could. "Michael, it's not what you think," she repeated, her voice shaking. "Stop saying that," I yelled. "You're lying, Emily. If it's nothing, let me see your phone." She took a step back, tears welling up in her eyes. "You don't need to see it," she whispered. "Why not? What are you hiding?" Her lip trembled, and she sank onto the bed, the phone still clutched in her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she murmured. "I was lonely. You're always gone, and I needed someone to talk to." "Don't you dare put this on me," I said, my voice cold. "I'm gone because I'm working to give us a life, to give you everything you ever wanted." She finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I think I developed feelings for him," she admitted quietly. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, my chest tightening. "Feelings?" I said bitterly. "That's what you're calling this? Feelings?" She wiped her face, struggling to speak. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to." "But you did," I cut her off. "You made a choice, Emily." "I felt invisible," she cried. "You don't know how hard it is to feel like you're living alone. I didn't want this, but I raised my hand to stop her. "I don't care how lonely you felt. You betrayed me, and now you're justifying it?" For a moment, neither of us said anything. The tension in the room was unbearable. "I can't do this right now," I said, finally, grabbing my keys from the dresser. "Michael, wait," she pleaded. I stopped at the doorway but didn't look back. "I'll wait when you start telling the truth." Then I walked out, slamming the door behind me. Outside, the night was cold, the air sharp in my lungs. I didn't know where I was going, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. The cold night air did little to clear my head. I drove aimlessly for a while, anger and confusion swirling in my chest. Emily's words kept repeating in my mind. I think I developed feelings for him. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a small, quiet bar. I ordered a whiskey, hoping it might dull the storm in my head. Not long after, a woman sat a few seats down. She looked out of place in her blazer and pencil skirt, sipping a martini like she was trying to erase her day. "Rough night?" she asked, noticing my empty stare. "You could say that," I replied. We exchanged a few presentlies, and I mentioned my wife worked at a bank. Her eyebrows rose. "Which bank?" she asked. When I told her, she chuckled. "Small world. I work there too." "What's your wife's name?" "Emily." Her expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Oh," she said slowly, her tone guarded. That pause sent a chill down my spine. "You know her?" "Yeah," she said hesitantly. "She works with Ryan, right?" The mention of his name made my stomach drop. "You know Ryan?" Karen let out a bitter laugh. "Everyone knows Ryan," she said. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice sharpening. She hesitated, glancing around the room. "He's got a reputation," she admitted. "He's charming, and people talk, especially about the women he gets close to." My chest tightened. "What about Emily?" She sighed, lowering her voice. "I've seen them leaving together after work. They're close. Maybe it's nothing, but—" She trailed off. "Close how?" I pressed. Karen shifted uncomfortably. "They've gone out of town together a few times for meetings. I don't know the details, but it's something people have noticed." The word meeting sent a jolt through my head. I remembered when Emily had told me she'd be working late on a big project. It matched the timing Karen described. "I'm not saying anything's definitely happening," Karen added quickly. "But if I were you, I'd ask her. Ryan's not exactly trustworthy." Her words echoed in my head. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was just office gossip. But deep down, I knew she wasn't. When I got home, the house was quiet. Emily was on the couch scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked in. "Hey," she said, smiling weakly. "Where did you go?" I didn't answer. I sat across from her, staring her down. "We need to talk." Her smile faded. "About what?" "About Ryan, and about why everyone at your work seems to think there's something going on between you two." Her face went pale. Emily's pale face and shaky excuses from the night before weren't enough to satisfy me. I needed to know the truth. I wasn't just going to sit around waiting for her to tell me half lies. That's why when she told me she had errands to run after work, I didn't head back to the rig like I'd planned. Instead, I followed her. Her car pulled into a small cafe on the edge of town. It wasn't her usual kind of place. Too quiet, too tucked away. I parked down the street and waited, watching as she walked inside. Not 5 minutes later, another car pulled in. I recognized the man who got out immediately. Ryan. My heart pounded as he casually walked into the cafe, his body language far too relaxed for a coworker. I waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel until I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out of the car and crossed the street, keeping low as I peered through the cafe windows. They sat in a corner booth, leaning in close, their heads almost touching as they talked. Emily laughed, her hand brushing his arm, and something inside me snapped. I was ready to confront them right then and there, but they stood up before I could. I watched them walk toward the back of the cafe, disappearing down the hall that led to the restrooms. Something wasn't right. Without thinking, I got back into my truck and grabbed the portable blowtorch I kept in the back. It was small but powerful, standard for my work on the rigs. Fueled by adrenaline and pure rage, I walked into the cafe, barely noticing the shocked looks from the other patrons. I headed straight for the restroom. Inside, muffled sounds came from the stall at the far end. I pushed the door open and immediately saw 2 pairs of legs tangled together. The sound of their heavy breathing stopped as soon as the door slammed against the wall. Having fun? I growled, sparking the blowtorch to life. The blue flame hissed, illuminating their shocked faces as they scrambled to separate. Emily shrieked, pulling her dress back into place, while Ryan stumbled half-dressed against the wall. His eyes widened in panic. "Michael, what are you doing?" Emily screamed, her voice high and shaking. "What am I doing?" I barked. "What the hell are you doing?" I pointed the flame toward Ryan, who cowered, his hands raised in surrender. "Look, man, calm down," he stammered. I stepped closer, the flame dangerously close to his face. "Calm down? You think I'm just gonna stand there while you screw my wife in a public restroom?" The smell of burning hair hit the air as the torch singed the edges of Ryan's hair. He screamed, batting at his head while Emily begged me to stop.
The corner, her face twisted in terror. Ryan made a break for the door, shoving past me, his shirt still unbuttoned. Emily followed, clutching her dress as they burst into the cafe. The other patrons gasped, their conversation stopping as the half-dressed pair stumbled out, looking like they'd seen a ghost. I stood there for a moment, the torch still lit in my hand, my chest heaving. Then reality hit me. The employees were already on their phones, probably calling the cops. I couldn't stay. I ran out of the cafe, jumping into my truck and speeding off. My hands were shaking as I drove, the adrenaline coursing through me like fire. In the rearview mirror, I saw flashing blue lights. The cops were already on my tail. The flashing blue lights in my rearview mirror felt like a hammer to my chest. My heart pounded, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. I didn't have a plan, just the overwhelming need to get away. The truck roared down the empty highway, the engine straining as I pushed it to its limits. The police sirens grew louder, closing the gap. Every turn of the wheel was fueled by a mix of anger, fear, and sheer adrenaline. What the hell had I done? Images flashed in my mind. Emily's terrified face, Ryan stumbling out of the restroom, the shocked stares of the cafe patrons. The smell of burning hair still lingered in my nose. I tried to focus on the road, but my thoughts spiraled. What happened when they caught me? Jail time? Headlines in the local paper? Would Emily even care? Or was she already running back to Ryan's arms? I spotted an exit up ahead, leading to a narrow back road. Without thinking, I swerved onto it, my tires skidding over loose gravel. The truck fishtailed, but straightened out as I gunned it, hoping to lose the cops in the winding roads. But the flashing lights didn't disappear. The gravel turned into dirt, and the truck bounced over uneven ground. My hands were shaking, my pulse thundering in my ears. Suddenly, the wheels hit a patch of loose rocks, and the truck veered out of control. I yanked the wheel, but it was too late. The truck slid sideways, the tires digging into the earth before coming to a jarring stop in a shallow ditch. The sirens grew deafening. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, cursing under my breath. There was no way out. I opened the door and stepped out, my hands raised as the police cars screeched to a halt behind me. 2 officers stepped out, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them," one of them shouted. "I'm not armed," I yelled back, dropping to my knees. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow, crushing weight in my chest. The officers approached cautiously, cuffing me and pulling me to my feet. As I was being led to the police car, one of the officers froze. "Wait, Michael," he said, stepping closer. I squinted at him, and recognition hit me like a punch. It was Officer Daniels, a friend of Emily's family. He'd been at our wedding, even made a toast about how lucky I was to have her. Daniels stared at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. "What the hell is going on?" I lost it," I muttered, my voice shaking. He pulled the other officer aside, speaking in hushed tones before walking back to me. "You're not in a good place right now," he said, his tone softer than I expected. "I'll do what I can to keep this off the books for now, but you need to tell me what's going on." I sat in the back of the patrol car, the cuffs digging into my wrists, and spilled everything. The lies, the photo, the confrontation at the cafe. It all came pouring out. Daniels listened in silence, his face unreadable. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "Michael, you gotta get your head straight. This isn't the way to handle it." "I know," I said quietly, staring at the floor. Daniels nodded toward the other officer.
I'll try to buy you some time, but you need to figure out what you're going to do, because from what you've told me, you're not just running from us, you're running from everything." As the car pulled away, I felt the weight of his words. He was right, but I didn't know if I had the strength to face what came next. I pulled into the driveway, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a storm ready to explode. The house was dark, except for the glow of the living room light. I knew she'd be there, waiting, trying to explain herself again. When I stepped inside, Emily was sitting on the couch, her face pale and streaked with tears. She stood up as soon as she saw me. "Michael," she started, her voice trembling, "please let me explain." I didn't answer. I didn't even look at her. I walked straight past her and up the stairs. My hands were shaking, my vision blurry with anger. "Michael, stop!" she cried, following me. I threw open the closet door, grabbing handfuls of her clothes and tossing them onto the floor. "What are you doing?" she screamed, running to try and stop me. I didn't respond. I scooped up the pile and headed to the window. With a single motion, I threw it all outside, the fabric fluttering down onto the lawn. "Michael, stop, please!" she begged, clutching in my arm. I shrugged her off and went back for more. Shoes, bags, even her jewelry box, anything that was hers went out the window. Outside, I could hear voices. Neighbors were gathering, their murmurs growing louder as they watched the chaos unfold. "Michael, you're acting crazy. People are watching," Emily sobbed, trying to block the doorway. "Good," I spat, shoving past her. "Let them watch. Let everyone see what happens when you destroy your marriage." She followed me down the stairs, crying harder as I threw her belongings onto the lawn. A few neighbors shouted up at me, but I didn't care. "You're embarrassing yourself," she yelled, her voice breaking. "No," I said, turning to face her for the first time. "You embarrassed me. You embarrassed us. You think I care what they think? I care that you lied. I care that you betrayed me." The sound of someone yelling, "Is everything okay?" from outside barely registered. My focus was on the pile of her life scattered across the lawn. Emily dropped to her knees in the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. "Michael, please stop," she whispered. By now, phones were out. Neighbors were recording, their faces lit by their screens. One man called out, "Hey, take it easy, man." I looked directly at him. "You think this is your business? You want to see what betrayal looks like? Take a good look." I stepped out onto the lawn, standing among the mess of clothes and personal items. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't care. The crowd grew larger, the murmurs louder. I could already imagine the videos hitting social media, the comments pouring in. I knew some would call me a monster, others would call me a hero. None of it mattered. "This is over," I said coldly, turning back to Emily. "Get out of this house. I don't want to see you here again." She stayed on the porch, trembling, her face streaked with mascara. I didn't wait for her response. I walked back inside, slamming the door behind me. The sound of her crying outside was muffled, but it didn't faze me. I'd made my decision. Let the world watch. I woke up to the buzz of my phone vibrating endlessly on the nightstand, groggy and still emotionally drained. I reached for it, half expecting Emily to have sent me another message. But it wasn't her. It was everyone else. Dozens of notifications filled the screen, texts, missed calls, and links to videos of last night's chaos. I scrolled through one of the videos, seeing myself in the frame tossing Emily's things out the window while she cried on the porch. The captions ranged from "man loses it after catching wife cheating" to "revenge or overreaction." The comments were a battlefield. Some praised me, calling me a hero for standing up against betrayal. Others condemned me, saying I'd gone too far and humiliated her unnecessarily. I tossed the phone aside, feeling both vindicated and sickened. The house was eerily quiet. Emily was gone. I found a note on the kitchen counter, her handwriting shaky and uneven. "Michael, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I'll stay away for now and give you space. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I crumbled the note and threw it in the trash without finishing. There was nothing left to say. By midday, I made my decision. I couldn't stay here. Not in this house. Not in this neighborhood. The memories were too sharp. The shame too heavy. I called a real estate agent and started the process of selling the house. A few weeks later, the moving truck pulled away, leaving me standing in the empty driveway for the last time. I didn't feel sad. If anything, I felt lighter. I drove west, not entirely sure where I was going, but knowing I needed a fresh start. Eventually, I landed in a small town in Oregon, far enough from Denver to feel like a different world. I rented a modest apartment overlooking the forest and found work on a construction crew. It was hard, honest labor, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One evening, after a long day, I sat on the balcony watching the sun set over the mountains. For the first time in weeks, my mind wasn't consumed by what happened with Emily. I wasn't thinking about Ryan, the cafe, or even the videos that had turned my life into a viral spectacle. I was thinking about the future. I didn't know if I'd ever trust someone again. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But one thing was clear. I'd never settle for anything less than honesty and loyalty. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It felt like a sign, a reminder that even after the darkest days, there's still light to be found. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.